Welcome to another episode of Behind the Scenes, a weekly program unveiling the biggest political developments in Somali politics. I'm Sultan Mohammed, your host here on Holder for the Media. On this week's program, another crisis looms in Mogadishu with a political rift between Prime Minister Mohamed Hussein Roble and President Farmaajo following the dismissal of NISA Chief Fahad Yassin and appointment of Abdullahi Noor as Internal Security Minister. This is yet another political battle between the President and his Prime Minister unfolding in such a critical moment in Somali politics. It is evident more than ever that the tensions between the two highest political offices stem directly from the Somali constitution. So, is it time for a reform? That is the topic on the program today. We hope you find this program very informative. Please like, share, and for similar content, do subscribe to Order for the Media. Let's get straight into it. The political infighting between the Somali president and his prime minister has been a constant theme in Somali politics in the last decade. We've seen President Farmaajo and his prime minister Hassan Al Khaira, or President Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud and his prime minister Abdiweli Sheikh Ahmed. So a question arises, why does this issue consistently occur in the Somali state, irrespective of who's in office? The answer is very simple. It's the provisional Somali constitution. Let's begin with what is a constitution and its purpose. The central idea of a constitution is to limit the power of government. Constitutions generate a set core of principles and specific provisions to which future laws and any government activity must conform to. This is vital in the functioning of a democratic state, as it upholds the core democratic principles that govern it. The reality is that without commitment to a constitution, the heads of state or government can operate for the short-term benefit of themselves rather than that of the people they govern. Therefore, those that find themselves out of power, such as you and I, may find that we are virtually unprotected, and it is such people that eventually resort to extra constitutional means to secure power or security. For example, in Somalia, we see the use of traditional laws, or the use of paramilitary groups such as clan militia, or even Islamic extremism such as Al-Shabaab. Additionally, constitutions set up government institutions and define legal parameters of such institutions. For example, the constitution authorizes the existence of the Somali National Intelligence and Security Agency and its legal can and can't do's. Any deviation from the constitutionally stipulated regulations would amount to unconstitutionality and illegality, which would be prosecuted with the fullest law. Simply, constitutions are the foundation for government and societal cohesion in virtually every country. A poor constitution is often the root cause for poor economic development and political outcomes, and we're currently watching this unfold in Somalia yet again. Now, Somalia, first and only universally accepted constitution, was initially drafted in 1960 with a popular referendum in June 1961, the only constitution ratified by Somalis via universal suffrage. This constitution provided for parliamentary democracy, with the Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers, or the cabinet, being drawn from the membership of the legislature. In the history of Somalia, this has been the only constitution which has been brought before the people and ratified via popular vote. The subsequent military junta led by Siad Barre effectively suppressed democracy and democratic values for decades before the state would collapse by 1991. Since then, Somalia has not created a constitution which has been endorsed by the majority of Somalis. And to be clear, the constitution is essentially an agreement between the citizen and the state. It stipulates the boundaries of the state and its interactions with the citizen, while simultaneously outlining the rights of the citizen that can be exercised against the state. And without these boundaries fundamentally being agreed upon, it is understandable that many in Somalia might feel that they've been done wrong, or cheated, or simply ignored. This is the exact causes of constant clan bickering and creation of clan militia. And for such people, the state doesn't represent or cannot represent them. So why is this? Ask yourself, well, this is because how can one expect citizens to adhere to rules which have been imposed upon them without their will, and which doesn't represent or protect their own interests? It is the absence of this national agreement or consensus which provides the environment for constant formations of various armed clan militias that see the state as an equal entity rather than a guarantor of security and stability. The lack of effective federal government control across Somalia further weakens the status of this constitution. Now, the constitution does not only oversee the relationship between the state and the citizen, but it also governs the relationship between varying government departments and offices. The relationship and the roles of the president and the prime minister has remained the most controversial and contentious issue in the Somali state. Since the establishment of the Somali transitional government in 2000 following the Arta conference, each president has had 3 prime ministers in the last 4 years of term. For example, President Abdi Qasim Hassan had Ali Khalif, Hassan Abshir Farah, and Mohammed Abdi Yusuf, and similarly, Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud had Abdi Farah Shirton, Abdiweli Sheikh Umar Shirmake. So 2 questions are arising. 1, why is there always a constant battle between the president and the prime minister? And 2, does Somalia need both a prime minister and a president? Once an individual is appointed as prime minister in Somalia, the office comes with huge responsibilities and power, but it also comes with a lot of temptations and influence. And as a prime minister, a lot of individuals, rather than serving the nation and its president, most become indulged in the possibility or prospect of becoming a presidential candidate themselves. And it's hardly surprising when foreign powers or financial influences are pitching support for such propositions and pushing a prime minister to run for office. And we've seen this with former Prime Minister Hassan al-Khaira, who's currently a presidential candidate himself. The underpinning constitutionally outlined duties are contradictory, which also increases the likelihood of political battles between the two leaders. So, does Somalia need both a prime minister and a president? The reality is most countries do not have a prime minister and a president. For example, the United Kingdom has only a prime minister, and the United States only has a president. Indeed, while some countries have both, such as Russia, the president yields tremendous power in comparison to the prime minister, who remains subordinate. Conversely, in Somalia, the prime minister himself becomes a direct political challenge to his own boss, the president. The president is consistently worried about whether his prime minister will attempt to seek the presidency and backstab him himself. Therefore, a country in which its upper echelons of government are mistrusting or fighting each other, the state cannot and will not run smoothly. The current provisional Somali constitution is evidently a major contributor to the legal and political tensions between the president and his prime minister. For example, if we look at the current political deadlock between President Farmajo and Prime Minister Roble regarding the appointment of Abdullahi Mohamed Noor as Internal Security Minister, two contradicting constitutional sections are the direct cause of this legal battle. Article 90, subsection E of the Somali constitution states that the president can dismiss ministers and state ministers as well as deputy ministers on the recommendations of the prime minister. Conversely, Article 100 states that the Prime Minister's powers include the appointment and dismissal of ministers without consultation with the President. So automatically a question arises: who has the absolute right to dismiss or appoint ministers, particularly during a caretaker government? And can ministers be dismissed or appointed during a period of election? The relevant articles of the Constitution fail to address or clarify these constitutional discrepancies. What is clear, however, is that the Constitution has been designed to cause direct conflict between the President and his Prime Minister. This has and is utilized by foreign powers and enemies of Somalia to consistently create political conflict between Somali leaders, which hinders or even sets back progress in the Somali state. For instance, the current issue between the Prime Minister and the President has slowed down the election implementation progress and cohesion between the government. The government has split into two factions, with some supporting the Prime Minister and others supporting the President. For example, the Somali National Television has refused to report the President's actions, including the appointment of the National Committee investigating the death of Tahlil, effectively placing the president on an internet blackout. This direct conflict within the government means that the government will be paralyzed, and a paralyzed government has many beneficiaries, particularly in Somalia. One, for example, Al-Shabaab. The victory of the Taliban has been seen by Al-Shabaab as evidence and motivation to attempt the same victory in Somalia. A weak and divided government will create the perfect environment for that. Number two, states that benefit from a failed government in Somalia, such as Kenya, which wishes to succeed in the ICJ case against Somalia and its waters. And thirdly, international organizations and research groups that financially benefit from war in Somalia. The reality is that the last constitution Somalis agreed upon was 60 years ago. For Somalis to finally reconcile and a government to be formed which is accepted by all, Somalis must come together and create a constitution which is accepted by all Somalis. The constitution is critical for economic growth, political stability, and social cohesion. An underpinning Supreme Court, which upholds and interprets the constitution, would provide the mediatory body that would ensure misunderstandings do not result in all-out political or military warfare. For Somalia to move on to the next stage of state development, it must have an effective rule of law which can be upheld by an accepted Supreme Court. The rule of law is critical to any democratic state, especially a state such as Somalia, which after 30 years of bloodshed and death needs reconciliation and unity more than ever.